Well, hello, confirmands. It is good to see you. I hope you are well. This is year one of Lutheran Foundations. It's a confirmation curriculum. As you are aware, year one is called It Starts Here, Stories of the Old Testament, and we are tonight on lesson 18, in which we discuss the last and perhaps greatest of the judges, Samuel. Now remember, there were 15 judges over a period of several hundred years that led Israel both religiously and civilly. They were the center of both the government and the religious life of the people. And they, remember this pattern that we've seen over and over and over again. The judges were sent by God to help rescue Israel when Israel had forgotten who they were and how they were supposed to act and who God was. Every time they forgot, God let some calamity happen to the people. Then they'd remember, they'd call out to God. God would send a judge to set them free, to lead them into freedom. So Samuel is the last of these judges. After Samuel, we move into the period of the kings. There are 3 kings of a unified Israel, and then we have a divided Israel with kings north and south. We will get there, don't worry about that. Tonight we're talking about Samuel. Just a quick review. Last time we talked about Ruth, who lived sometime during the time of the judges, in which everyone tried to do the right thing. It's an interesting story because there's absolutely no villain in it of any kind. You know, there's no one even pretending to be Voldemort, and no one being dumb. That we have people who are all trying to live the way they're supposed to live. And now we get to Samuel and we find people behaving badly again, which is sad, but rather more like the world that we know, right? So the story of Samuel starts with a woman named Hannah. Hannah could not have children in this time in history. Pretty much a woman existed to have children, and if she couldn't have children, it was a tremendous mark against her, socially, religiously, that she was considered to be a failure as a person. Hannah was married. Her husband, no one ever imagined that it was the man's problem. But in this case, it does appear to be Hannah's. Her husband had another wife, and they had children together. And Hannah was very, very, very sad. So every year, this family would go to Shiloh, where the priest Eli and the Ark of the Covenant were, and they would say their prayers and give their offerings. One of the years, Hannah went and she was praying in the place, in the temple. It's not really a temple yet; it's a tabernacle. She was praying there, and before the ark. And Eli came in, and he thought she was drunk. She was moving her lips, and she was very sad. But he couldn't hear anything, so he thought she was drunk, and he started to upbraid her. He started to give her trouble. What are you thinking, being drunk here in the house of the Lord? And Hannah said, I'm not drunk, I'm praying, I was pouring out my heart to God, that God would hear my prayer and give me the desires of my heart. And Eli backed up, and he was sorry, and he said, may God grant you the thing for which you're praying. So Hannah believed that God would answer her prayer, that God would give her a child, a son. Hannah went home with her husband, and sure enough, they conceived. And they had a little boy, and they named him Samuel. She took care of Samuel until he was weaned, which would have been 3 or 4 years old, something like that. And then when he was weaned, she brought him back to Eli. And she said, I don't know if you remember me, but a few years ago I was here praying. You thought I was drunk. I was praying for this child. God has given me this child, and so he belongs to God, and I am giving him to you. You should take care of him. You should raise him, and all the days of his life he's going to belong to the Lord. Well, Eli accepted this little boy, and Samuel lived with Eli. Every year, Hannah would come visit him. She'd bring him a new coat that she'd made for him. And every year she'd talk about what a big boy he was starting to be, but Samuel grew up there with Eli, there watching what priests do, watching the people come and offer their sacrifices, and learning a great deal. Now, Eli had a couple of sons of his own. These turned out to be very, very, very bad men. that Eli was trying to get them to be priests after him. But when people would come, they would take the best parts of the offerings for themselves. They would take the money for themselves. They weren't appropriate in many other ways, and the people were upset that the religion of Israel was being mismanaged by these clowns. And people complained to Eli, what's going on here? You're a good priest, but your sons are garbage. Can you rein them in? And Eli would try to get his sons to be better behaved, but they were just bad men. God sent a prophet to tell Eli to deal with his sons, and Eli said he would try, but again, it didn't really work. So the next chapter in Samuel's life, he's a little boy still. I don't know, is he 9? Is he 11? He's just a little guy, and he's laying in bed. He actually slept in the room where the Ark of the Covenant was. He's laying in his roll of blankets, and God speaks to him, and God says, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel doesn't know it's God. Samuel thinks it's Eli calling him, so he pops up out of his bedroll, and he runs to Eli, and he says, "Yep, what do you need? What can I do for you? I heard you calling." And Eli says, "I didn't call you. Go back to bed." So Samuel goes back to bed, and God says, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel pops up, and he runs to Eli, and he says, "What do you need?" "Here I am. I heard you calling me again." And Eli said, "I didn't call you. Go back to bed." So Samuel lays down again, voice, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel pops up, runs to Eli. "What do you need?" "Here I am. I heard you calling me." Eli, he's been a priest a long time. He's a little slow on the uptake, but he finally figures out what's going on. And he says to Samuel, I'm not calling you. It must be God. So next time you hear the voice, if the voice comes again, instead of popping up and coming to me, say, "Speak, Lord, your servant listens." So Samuel went, lay back down again. The voice came again, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel said, "Speak, Lord, your servant listens." And God spent the night talking to Samuel, telling him that Eli's sons were going to be removed from the priesthood, that because Eli had failed, the priesthood would no longer flow down through his family, and that there was no going back from this. So in the morning, Eli wants to talk to Samuel. Did the voice call again? Yes. Was it God? Yes. Tell me what the voice said and don't leave anything out. So this little boy who's dependent on Eli for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and a place to sleep, he does the brave thing, and he tells Eli, it was God, and God wanted me to tell you that because your sons are such bad, wicked men, the priesthood is being taken away from your family forever. And Eli accepted that. He said the Lord will do what seems right to him, and life went back to normal. Now, Samuel continued to grow. The people continued to find reasons to respect him and disrespect Eli's sons. There's this division that's happening where people who really care about the faith know that Samuel's their guy, but still in Israel there's this huge portion of people who are worshiping idols and who are doing the wrong thing and who are living bad. And so, the Philistines take over, and they take more and more land. Some people come to Eli and to his sons, and they say, we're getting kicked around. We want to take the Ark of the Covenant into battle against the Philistines. And Eli's sons just grab the ark and go off down the road. Eli's not happy about this, but he can't stop his sons. He can't rein them in. So the sons go down the road. They come into the camp of the Israelites. The Israelites see the Ark of the Covenant. They start cheering wildly and making all kinds of noise. The Philistines are terrified. They send scouts out. The scouts find out what's going on. They come back to the Philistines and they say, the Israelites have brought the Ark of the Covenant into their camp. And the Philistines, these are not stupid people. They know the history. They know what God has done to various other lands and various other peoples, and they think that they're going to die because now the Ark of the Covenant is there with the Israelites. These were idol worshippers, and they thought that the Ark of the Covenant was some sort of souped up idol, and that if the Israelites had it with them in battle, there'd be no chance for them. But the The commanders of the Philistine army, they move among the soldiers and they say, you know, fight your hardest. You don't want to be slaves of the Israelites. When we go into battle tomorrow, do your absolute best. And so the next morning the battle is joined. God's not going to help the Israelites. He hasn't told them to bring the Ark of the Covenant. They're on their own. They're treating the Ark of the Covenant like it's an idol too. Right? Nobody's praying to God. No one's asking God for help. No one's asking God to rescue his people. They figure that if they've got the Ark of the Covenant there, everything's going to be golden. Everything's going to be fine. So initially the battle goes well for the Israelites, but very quickly the Philistines turned the tide and they began to push back. And the bodies start to fall, including Eli's two sons. And the Ark is captured by the Philistines. And the Israelites, they break. The guys that are left, they've seen enough, and they just scatter. One guy runs back to Shiloh, where Eli is waiting for news. He tears his clothes, puts dust on his head so everyone will know that the news is bad. Eli hears him coming up the road, asks what's going on, and he tells them that the two sons of Eli, your two sons have been killed, and the ark has been captured by the Philistines. And by this time Eli is very old, he's very fat, he's blind, and when he hears this news he falls backward off the rock on which he's sitting and he breaks his neck and he dies. So the thing that God said, that the priesthood was being taken away from Eli's family, is realized on one day. Meanwhile, the ark has been captured. So the Philistines now have the Ark of the Covenant, and they bring it to one of their cities, and they put it in the temple of Dagon. We talked a little bit about Dagon in previous weeks. Remember, Dagon is the Philistines' god. We talked about it in the Samuel lesson. They put it in the temple of Dagon. Dagon's this god, half man, half fish, and they go home for the night. When they come the next morning, Dagon has fallen on his face in front of the Ark of the Covenant, like he's worshiping God, like he's worshiping the God of the Ark. Well, you know, that we can't have that. So they put Dagon back up on his platform. When they come the next morning, Dagon has fallen down in front of the ark again, and this time his hands are broken off and his head is broken off. And that's obviously bad news. And so they fix Dagon, they put him back up on his pedestal, and a sickness begins to spread through this city. That the Philistines get very, very sick, and it doesn't take them long to figure out that the God that can knock down Dagon has now started visiting his displeasure on them. And they send it up the road to the next Philistine town, and everyone in that town gets sick. And they send it up the road to the next Philistine town, and everyone in that town gets sick. And again, the Philistines aren't stupid. They figure out that this is a bad idea to keep this ark, but what exactly do you do with it now? So they got their wise men together, and they said, what should we do with this ark? And the wise men come up with a plan. You know, we're not sure that this is God making trouble. We're not sure that we're being cursed by the God of the Ark of the Covenant, so let's do a little test. And that sounds perfectly reasonable to everyone. So they build a new cart, and they put 2 milk cows in a yoke to pull this cart, and they stake their calves off by the side of the road, and the calves, of course, are bellowing for their mothers, and they put the Ark of the Covenant in this wagon, and then they let them go. And the test is that if the milk cows, who've never pulled anything before, I mean, these are milk cows, if they won't pull the wagon, or if they don't go back to Israel, or if they stop to be with their calves, then we'll know that this isn't God. But if these 2 milk cows who've never pulled a wagon before, go right into Israel and bring the ark home, ignore their calves, ignore their instincts, if they just take the ark home to Israel, then we'll know that the God of the ark wants the ark back in Israel, and we're well rid of it. So they do that. That sounds like a great idea to everyone. They put some presents in the back of the wagon. They put the ark in the back of the wagon. They stake the calves to the side of the road. And then they hook up these cows, and the cows just right up the road and into Israel. And so the Philistines are well rid of the ark. When it comes into Israel, the Israelites cannot believe their luck that the Ark of the Covenant has been returned to them. They celebrate. The town where they find it, they have a great party. There's a lot of celebrating, a fair amount of drinking, and 70 guys from the town decide to look in the ark, even though that is forbidden. And they all die. So they don't know what to do with the ark either, right? And they finally find a Levite who will take it, and this Levite puts it in charge, puts his son in charge of caring for it, and no one ever, the ark never ever goes back to Shiloh after that point. But the ark is back with the Israelites. Now, again, the Philistines continue to expand their influence over the Israelites. The Israelites have the ark back, but things are still bad. And they go to Samuel and they say, what's going on? Why are we having these troubles with the Philistines? And Samuel says, well, dummies. All of you have idols. You're all worshiping Baal and Asherah and who knows what else. We got sacred groves here and pillars there and idols here and altars there. If you want God to help you, you got to clean up. You got to remember what you're supposed to do, and you remember to serve God and keep God's laws and get rid of all of this foreign religion pollution. And the people are in the mood to obey, and a big cleanup starts. Now, Samuel calls everyone together. We're going to have a big nationwide prayer meeting. We're going to talk about the law. We're going to talk about what you're supposed to do. We're going to pray to God for God's blessing. And so the call goes out, and Israel starts to gather. Now, the Philistines hear that all of Israel is gathering, and they think that Israel is putting together an army, that they're going to march on the cities of the Philistines and try to conclude this war. And so the Philistines, they send their army out, and they head to where this prayer meeting is. The Israelites see them coming. They didn't bring any weapons. They don't have anything. They came to pray. They came to in response to Samuel's call. Samuel offers a lamb, asks that God would protect the people, and God sends this enormous thunderstorm that just discombobulates and terrifies the Philistines. So the Philistines, they're so scared of this storm that they drop their weapons and run away. The Israelites run after them. They pick up the Philistines' own weapons. They kill a bunch of them with their own weapons, and they chase them back into their cities. And as long as Samuel was alive, the Philistines pretty much didn't bother Israel anymore. In fact, they even gave back some of the cities that they had taken from Israel. Now, this isn't the last we've heard of the Philistines. We're going to hear more about them. There's going to be more fighting, more trouble with them. But they don't want to deal with Samuel anymore. They don't want to deal with the ark anymore. They don't want to deal with the God of Israel anymore. And so there's this period of relative rest. Now, talking about reoccurring patterns, Samuel is the judge of Israel, and he does a good job. But Samuel has sons that he's preparing to take over after him, and they too are bad men. So it's just like the thing with Eli, that the elders of Israel come to Samuel and they say, you're a great judge, you're doing great, but your sons, they're rubbish. And we don't want them to be in charge of us after you die. So, you're getting old. We want a king. We want a king like the other nations have kings. We can't do this hit and miss thing with judges anymore. We want a king. And Samuel says, you don't want a king. Yeah, we do. We want a king. No, you don't. You don't want a king. And the people say, yeah, we really do. We really want a king. So Samuel goes and talks to God about it. And God says to Samuel, what are you so upset about? They're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. I'm supposed to be their king. They don't want me to be their king anymore. They want a human being to be their king. So give them a king. Tell them what having a king means. But if they insist on having a king, get out of their way. So Samuel calls all the people together again, and he says, you really don't want a king. And they say, yeah, we really do. And Samuel says, here's why you don't. If you have a king, they're going to take away your best fields. They're going to take away your best vineyards. They're going to take away your best olive groves, and all those are going to be the possession of the crown. They're going to take 10% of everything from you every single year. They're going to take your sons to run in front of their chariots and to fight their wars. They're going to take your daughters to work in their bakeries and to clean the palaces and to warm their beds. You don't want a king. He's going to take away a whole bunch of your stuff and give it to his friends. The last thing you want is a king. And the people say, no, we want a king. And Samuel says, okay, God says I should give you the king that you want. But when you cry out to God that the king is mistreating you, that the king is taking your land and your vineyards, your sons and your daughters, that the king is taking all the best that you have and giving it to his friends, God is not going to help you here. Okay? And the people say, okay, give us a king. So, God tells Samuel, I'm going to show you the guy. Meanwhile, there's a guy named Saul. Saul is the son of Kish, and Kish is a landowner, and Kish has 3 donkeys turn up missing one day, and he sends Saul and a servant to try to find the missing donkeys. And they go on an adventure looking everywhere for the donkeys. They can't find the donkeys. They're out for a long, long time, days and days and days. And Saul finally says to the servant, we got to go home. Dad's going to stop worrying about the donkeys, and he's going to be worried about us. And the servant says, hey, we're right near where Samuel lives. Let's ask the man of God if he can help us locate these missing donkeys. And Saul says, no, I didn't bring a gift for him. And the servant said, I got a little bit of silver. You can take my silver, give it as a gift to the man of God. Let's just see. So Saul and the servant walk into town. There's some women coming out, shepherdesses, I think. And they ask if Samuel is there in the town, and they say, yeah, he just was in the gate. You can still catch him. So Saul and the servant go after Samuel. Samuel turns around, and that's the guy. He recognizes, God lets him recognize that Saul is the guy who's supposed to be the king, the first king of Israel. Samuel says to them, there's a big banquet tonight, why don't you stay? We're just looking for some donkeys. We're not... No, please stay. So they go to this banquet, and at the banquet, Samuel makes sure that Saul sits in a place of honor and has the best of all the food that there is. Now, in the morning, after the banquet, the servant and Saul head out of town. Samuel's walking with them. And Samuel says to Saul, send the servant on ahead a little bit. There's something that I want to tell you, a word from the Lord. And so Saul does that. The servant goes on ahead, and when he's out of sight, Samuel tells Saul that he is going to be the first king of Israel. And Saul doesn't believe him. It's like the Gideon story. Who am I, my family? Right? Again, we got these patterns happening over and over and over. So Saul doesn't think it's a good idea for him to be king, and he doesn't think he's important enough to be the king. But Samuel anoints him as the first king of Israel. Right? Anointing is you pour olive oil on someone and rub it in, right? And that's a Messiah. It's a smeared one. Messiah means smeared one. And Messiah with a little m is anybody who's anointed with oil to be the king. And Messiah with the big M, capital M, is Jesus. But they didn't know that. So Samuel anoints Saul to be king. Saul still doesn't think that there's anything to this. He thinks that it can't possibly be. And so Samuel says, there's going to be some things that are going to happen on your way home so that you know to trust me. Right? The first thing that's going to happen is that you're going to meet a couple of guys who tell you that your father's donkeys have been found and now Pop is worried about you. Then you're going to meet some people who are going to offer you some bread. And then you're going to meet some prophets near a Philistine stronghold who are going to greet you and recognize you. And those 3 things are going to happen so that you can trust that God has chosen you to be the king of Israel. And on his way home, that's exactly what happens. Right? The 3 things happen, and Saul starts to believe it. As he's getting very near his house, he sees his uncle. His uncle asks where he's been. He says, we've been seeing the man of God and looking for the donkeys. Well, the donkeys are back, but your pop's worried about you. Saul tells him some of their adventures, but doesn't tell him that he's been anointed king of Israel. He just keeps that close to the vest, under his hat, however you want to say it. You pick your favorite idiom. But Saul has been anointed. He's not told anyone. In the whole world, there are 2 people, and exactly 2 people, who know that Saul has been anointed the next king. That would be Saul and Samuel. And you're going to have to wait until next week to hear the circumstances under which Saul is acclaimed or recognized as the king of united Israel. So that's Samuel. We're not at Samuel's death yet. Samuel lives into the time of Saul and then David. But this is the conclusion of Samuel being the judge of Israel, where he has responsibility for both the religious life and the governmental life. Once we have a king, the king will take over the governmental side of managing the people. Samuel will continue to be the Lord's representative in Israel. And sometimes that's going to cause conflicts between Samuel and the kings. So that's where we're going to pause for right now. I do want you to remember that you are precious to God. I want you to remember that God has a plan and a purpose for your life, that God has gifted you to do the things that God intends you to do, and that no matter how hard, grim, dismal middle school is, there is a place for you in the kingdom of light. You're a baptized child of God, and you belong to God. So we're going to keep going forward with these stories. We're going to keep watching God prepare Israel to give the world the Messiah with a capital M. We're in the part now of the story where there's a whole bunch of Messiahs with little m's, human kings, and you're not going to be at all surprised to see that the pattern of obedience and disobedience that we've been watching from the very beginning continues during the period of the kings. All right, you take care. It is always good to see you, and I look forward to our conversations. Bye-bye now.